This weekend, California officials declared that the last of the deadly fires that scorched more than 59 square miles and destroyed 16,000 structures were fully contained. Now, recovery and rebuilding gets underway. Cleanup crews are working to clear debris, contain toxins, and evaluate damage, while residents grapple with the lingering mental health effects of this life altering event. Ali Rogan has more on this ongoing toll.
Rebecca Lombino's home of 20 years burned to the ground 3 weeks ago. She and her sister donned hazmat suits and picked through the rubble.
It was an overwhelming feeling of seeing the devastation, and I had seen a picture of the house, but that did nothing to give me any forewarning of what I was going to feel when I got here, and it just overtook me.
Look at this beautiful home where someone lived.
Actor and producer Steve Guttenberg captured the destruction the day after fire tore through his Pacific Palisades neighborhood.
I was really conscious of my mental state and my mental health because the last 3 days, I've seen such tragedy. I've seen people scared, people in wheelchairs, mothers and fathers trying to find their kids, people having anxiety attacks, panic attacks.
One study found that up to 60% of adults might suffer post-traumatic stress disorder for up to 6 months after a wildfire. At least a quarter may experience major depression and anxiety. PBS News spoke with Americans who have lived through past wildfires about how they continue to be affected.
It does take a toll on you mental health-wise because it's not something you could just turn off.
Todd Mott is a veteran wildland firefighter in Montana.
I think I went into avoidance mode for a long time, and I was holding on to things and not really necessarily expressing whatever the dissatisfaction with the situation was, or how I was traumatized by, seeing somebody's family album with the burning pictures blowing down the street.
And it's not just first responders and those who've lost their homes who suffer. Mitch Stone evacuated during the massive 2017 Thomas Fire.
Everyone still talks about it as though it was a recent event. It's hard to believe it's as long ago as it really was because it stays very present in your mind.
His home survived, but the experience has stayed with him.
Every time that wind blows, and especially if you see fires burning in other areas, you're immediately put into a different state of mind.
For more on how people can be affected for years by the trauma of a disaster, we turn to Dr. Sherry Weiser. She's the co-founder of the University of California Center for Climate Health and Equity and a professor of medicine at UC San Francisco. Sherry Weiser, welcome. These LA residents, many of them, are moving from survival mode to recovery mode. What are the attendant challenges with that?
There are so many challenges, as you said it. Some people have lost their homes, some are evacuated and their homes are at risk. Many others are just affected by wildfire smoke. For others that are maybe not directly affected, but they're emotionally impacted by things like eco-anxiety and feelings like Los Angeles will never be the same. The impacts on people's psychological health is maybe a little bit different depending on what group people fall into. I think with people who are displaced, there's also a mental health burden of evacuation and the uncertainty that comes with not knowing where you're going to live, how you're going to deal with your insurance, where you'll resettle. Are you going to go back to your home? Is your home going to be safe? So there's just a lot of stressors for those individuals.
Research shows that trauma of a disaster like this can last for years. What can people do to cope with some of those long-term effects?
So first of all, just to emphasize what some of those long-term effects are, you mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder. People also can develop a new onset of depression, of anxiety disorders. For people with pre-existing mental illness, you can see exacerbation of those, and people can develop suicidal thoughts and ideations, and people will sometimes increase their substance use and worsen substance use disorders. So there's a lot of mental health consequences. And then to protect themselves, I think it's really about implementing proactive strategies to mitigate those risks. So first, of course, people need to go to a safe place. So they need to meet their basic needs. Once that's taken care of, I think it's very important for people who have been directly impacted to limit their exposure to the media, particularly very vivid images of wildfires can be very triggering. Social support, I can't even overstate how important that is. People tend to want to isolate themselves, but reaching out to friends, family, neighbors for support is so important. Finally, maintain your healthy behaviors, getting enough sleep, getting some exercise, engaging in things like mindfulness and breathing exercises can be very helpful, and making sure you have access to mental health support.
What about people who may not live in a disaster-prone area, but are thinking about these things, are watching them on TV, are worried about this sort of thing happening where they live?
So certainly there is tremendous eco-anxiety that people are experiencing all over California and really across the US about the devastation that they're witnessing in Los Angeles. And our center is getting many emails and inquiries about this issue. About half of young people in the world experience eco-anxiety, and sometimes eco-anxiety enough to disrupt their daily lives. And I think that as a society, we need to be proactive to take measures to address eco-anxiety, which can have mental health impacts even if you're not directly impacted. And at the University of California, we're trying to address this in an innovative way through a class, providing people with tools to address their eco-anxiety and help to convert their eco-anxiety into activism by getting engaged in community efforts, which has been shown to be a really helpful strategy for mitigating the symptoms of eco-anxiety.
Sherry Weiser with the University of California, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.